Sure. You wanna? No, Mark, it's all good. Just Father, Son, Holy Spirit, God, amen. Okay, thank you, Abuna, for inviting me to come and give you a talk today. So the talk is about this concept of spiritual economy. I'm going to say something that when I get asked to do these talks, oftentimes people think that us as speakers, we know whatever the subject is and we're going to give this talk and it's great. I read and heard about this idea many years ago, and it was an absolute privilege to revisit it again, look at the sort of material that Mark gave me, which was actually this very small booklet on PDF from Father Matthew the Poor, Mata el Miskin, about spiritual economy. And to say that it lit a fire under me is saying the least. Like, it was just wonderful, and I actually want to say thank you. Like, actually thank you for the invite, because I'm in a time in my life where it's like I needed this. Like, I actually needed to listen to this. So thank you, everyone, for having this Thursday night meeting and then giving me the opportunity to talk about it. So I would say that this idea of spiritual economy is something that is so unbelievably important, and yet the reality is, if we're being honest, we essentially don't talk about it. So if I asked you who's heard this term before, I don't expect everyone to say, like, most people are going to go, no, never heard of it. I'm now going to make a very deliberate point of talking about this all the time when I give talks, and even in my own spiritual life. I hope I'm able to take you through it and talk about the particular issues that I've been asked to point on. It's something that the church has thought about deeply. The church fathers spoke about. There's a reason why this very prolific author has chosen to talk about it. Now, when you hear that phrase, spiritual economy, they look like two words that don't belong together, correct? Okay, I'm going to take you through a journey. I'm not trying to be academic about this, where we're going to go through the etymological background of the word economy and where in the Greek it came from, so that you can, and then there's a test later. But we can't talk about what this is without understanding where it came from, and we're going to go through the journey together. So I'm going to start with the opening paragraph of this very small book from Father Matthew, which summarizes nicely what spiritual economy is, and then we'll sort of go through it. So, spiritual economy, in the words of the fathers, is the way in which a person builds their spiritual life. This comprises the types of principles, counsels, and special directives which a person follows in their spiritual behavior. A person whose spiritual economy has been perfected is the person who develops unhindered, regardless of his circumstances, however adverse they may be. As for the person who sets out without economy, weird word, we're going to go through that later, that person is greatly hindered on the way, and the journey through hardships is difficult for them, and quite possibly they will fall back. What is this? Spiritual economy. What is this profound thing that Father Matthew has said you have to have? How is it possible that we've been Christians all these years, and this thing that this priest says you have to have, no one's ever heard of? Have you heard of it? You heard of it? Everyone's like, yeah, I've never heard of it. But he's saying, you need it. Okay? So let's go through it. So, first off, this term economy. So when we think of economy, we think of money, government, GDP, income. That is not what it means. Okay? So again, we want to just go back. Sometimes like when we study the Bible, we have to go back to the meaning of the words in the Bible from those authors so we can understand what they meant, rather than our modern interpretation of those words. So I did a quick Google search and was delighted to find that the word economy in the Greek, I'm going to bastardize it, ekonomia, however you're supposed to say it, actually doesn't mean money, it doesn't mean GDP, it doesn't mean income. It means this term, household management. household management. It was called home economics, but you know, the idea of, okay, so, and I did my little Wikipedia search. The church fathers didn't invent this idea of economy, of household management. It's something that they borrowed from the Greeks. One of the things that we as Orthodox Christians have to understand is that our Christianity isn't something like pulled out of the vacuum, so to speak. God has certainly given these great ideas to many great thinkers. It is only in Christ that it's centered and correctly understood. And it was like an absolute part of early church father education to understand Greek philosophy. They studied it, they learnt it, so they all read Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, all of them, all the Marcus Aurelius, Stoicism. They all read it. And they understood it and they integrated it because it was good thinking. So let's go back to the church fathers. Let's go back to the Greeks. So when these Greek philosophers talked of economy, meaning household management, this is what they were thinking. They considered household management to be an art or a science. So they thought of it as something you deliberately did, but you did it with thoughtfulness and analysis and assessment and that didn't work. Okay, I'm going to go back into it. I'm going to fix that up. It was something to be done precisely and something beautiful. And they believed that economy is the one who makes the best of resources. That's what the idea was. So household management was taking what you have and making the best out of it. So we have to go back to Greek lifestyle, 2nd century BC. How did most people live? If you want, again, there's a method to my madness. Just come with me on this little boat ride. How did most Greeks back then live? Did they live in 20-story apartment buildings? Did they live on a house along Georges River? How did they live? What was the household like? Anyone want to take a guess? The typical. What did it look like? 600 square meters, double brick, village. So most households and the idea of living was agrarian, meaning we farmed, we grew, we sold, and that's how we lived. And almost all of the ancient world lived that way, and certainly in the Greek world, that's how they lived, and all their thinking was surrounded around how one lived. So when they talked of economy, what does that mean? Household management. What sort of household were they talking about? They didn't mean the 4 walls and the bathroom and the theatre room and the good living room and the Ayahaga living room where you can put your feet up and the 4 bedrooms upstairs and the play area. They thought of the home, the farm, growing things. To do what? Just to eat it? To eat, but also to sell. And they did that amongst many other households. So household management was about this life. Now we think, so what, Albert, you're saying they were all farmers? No. We think of farming as a job. They understood it as part of their life, to grow and to sell. So to take what they produced on their land, and I want you to think about this, to take it out of their land. This is a very important idea. You have to remember this. They took what was on their land, they produced, they grew for the purpose not to just consume inside, but to take out of their land and to sell. Sometimes to give to the poor, to give to others, sometimes to make money. And what did they do with that money? They brought it back in and they reinvested it, and then that was what was household management. And they had this philosophy. And this is so brilliant, so brilliant. That's what I was saying to Abuna. Thank you you guys. So brilliant. It's better to use a little that you have to make a lot than to have a lot which makes little. That's an idea there. That's a real idea. In our current Western philosophy, Western life, we don't think like that. What do we think about? It's just better to have a lot, correct? That's the goal. Does it matter what you use the a lot for? Again, when we talk in a secular way, no. Is it better to have $1 million or $10,000? Go. Million, of course. We're talking like logic, Westerner, secular thinking, eh? And it's better to have $1 billion than $1 million? Yeah. Notice what I'm not talking about. I'm not talking about what one does with the million or the 10,000 or the 1 billion. This is the mindset that we have been, I'm going to use a very strong term, propagandized with. But a long time ago, in a great civilization, they did not think about that. They thought that the ability to produce much with little, that is great household management. That is great economy. Now, if you could get more and then make more from it, produce more, thinking a farmer, land, I take my 2 acres and I grow 3 tons and then I reinvest it and I buy the land next door and I've got 4 acres, now I can make 20 tons. That was great, that was fantastic. So, the church fathers took this idea, spiritual economy. So, again, because it seems so weird to be paired together, when I say that word economy, I want you to think household management, but spiritual. So spiritual management, spiritual internal management. Okay. Now, Father Matthew, and the church, he's just borrowing off the church fathers, he's not invented anything new. The church fathers talk of inward economy and outward economy. Inward and outward. Now, because you haven't read this book, there were 3 sources for the spiritual economy that the church fathers talked about. The 3 sources. So, how do I put it this way, how do I figure out how to manage my spiritual life? From where? sorry. Where do I learn to do that? Bible, the grace of God, my confession, Father. So think about, like, if a farmer, if I gave you a farm, all right, how would you learn how to farm? Would you just try whatever you thought was good farming? What would you do? Go for it. You're a person who's not a farmer, and I don't think anyone here is. I have 1 chili plant. I don't know if that gives me the authority to talk about farming. Okay, how would you go about, you've been given 2 acres of land, you've been told you have to grow on it, you have to farm. What do you do? What do you do to learn how to do it? Go for it. Ask Cuba. You'd ask a farmer. Would there be anything else you would do using modern technology? Would you just ask the farmer and that's it? Yeah, you might do YouTube, you might do ChatGPT. So there might be a resource that you utilize. And what else? Thank you so much.
This is one of Josh's stash. It's not special. Oh, yeah. Like,
That's been spread on 6 times.
This is economy, right?
That's
there.
and
What little?
If I start talking in tongues, that's your
Oh, that's the order.
Okay. So it's common sense, isn't it? And I think that's the point that the church fathers were making. That if I wanted to learn how to farm, I wouldn't just try to farm off the top of my head, or maybe I saw farming happen a few times. I would go to a farmer, I would read documents about farming, and I would actually look at the land. I would pay attention to the land. So the church fathers talked about spiritual economy, spiritual management in the same way. You've got to go to your Bible, you've got to go to your confession, Father, and fundamentally you rely on the grace of God. So that's the basis of our spiritual economy. So what's with this inward, outward? What was this? So the idea here is that you have two places where you manage. So remember, economy is household management. Well, there's two ways or two places you have to manage, the inward and the outward. I'm going to use the analogy that we started with the Greek farmer. So the inward on the Greek farmer is his or her land, yeah? The soil, the fertilizer that's on the land, the physical house, the servants who may live there, and all those things. And we all understand, even though we're not farmers, the idea, the basic idea. Oh, you got to have the land and you put it in grids and you put seeds and you water it and then you got to put fertilizer and sharfair. Now, when it bears fruit, what do you do with it? You harvest it and then do what with it? Do you harvest it, put it in a big silo, put a big measuring stick, scream out to your neighbour, look at me, sucker, I've got 3 tons, you got nothing. What do you do with it? So you go out. So there's an outward management. Because selling the crop, growing the crop, 2 different things, aren't they? But they both require management. They both require learning, they both require skills, and you would be very silly to try to emphasize one over the other. Because if you try to just be a great marketer and a great seller, you won't be able to grow any crops. But if you just are a great farmer, but you have a sense of the market, the crops will just rot. True? Okay. So the church fathers spoke in the same way. There's the inward management, the inward economy, and the outward economy. So the inward economy is the behavior, this is a quote from Father Matthew, the behavior hidden in one's heart and in one's private chamber. When I heard that term, and in one's private chamber, I thought of the teaching that Christ gave when he was asked, how does one pray? So if you remember, everyone always says, oh, he taught the Our Father. He says something really important just before it. What does he say? And do what? Go into your room and close your door. What is the significance of going into the room and closing one's door? That it's private. It is, in a physical sense, a representation of the prayer of the heart. Because when we all pray privately, not using our words, it is private. No one can hear it. No one can understand it. No one can feel it. Much like, that whole idea if a tree falls in the woods and no one hears it, did it make a sound? You are private in your room. You've closed the door. No one can see you. The idea is no one can hear you. That is the inward economy. That is where the management takes place. In your heart, in your mind. This is fantastic. He didn't say or. And in the private spaces. When you're alone and you go to your little icon corner and you pray. When you're alone and you open up your beer and you pray. That's the inward economy. If the analogy helps, that's you farming on your land. Okay. Then you have the outward economy, the outward management. So that is everything that you do outside. Outward management can be, outward economy can be how you, like you and your family, you and the barista you get your morning coffee from, you and your friends, you and the people at church, you and the people at work, you and the stranger, you on social media, you and the world. And much like the farmer must learn the techniques and the management of farming and the management of selling, being in the market, knowing where's the correct stall, when is the day that we have to be in the market, how long does it take to get from my farm to the market, how should I store my things, oh it's very sunny here, it's very windy there, how long can I have it out, I can't have it near the garbage dump because otherwise the rats will come and eat it. There's a management there. We too have to have an outward economy. A way we prepare and understand to act outward in the world. Inward and outward. And it's, again, really important to go back to, it doesn't mean, so I don't want you to confuse with, yeah, Albert, I've heard this before. Inward action, outward action. There's a very careful word chosen by the church fathers here, which was economy. Again, if you don't like that word because it confuses you, use the term management. Because when I say how do you manage your household, anyone here lives in their own house? Yeah. If I talk to you about household management, you don't mean, oh, Albert, like, how do I act at home? Like, do I sing in the shower, or do I put a speaker? Do I cook at 8 or 9? You understand what that word means, management. You understand it means paying the bills. When do I vacuum? When do we change the sheets? Do we turn off the lights before we leave a room? You know what I mean? Like, it's everything. So there's this spiritual management, this spiritual economy. Now here's a question. So I've presented you, I've taken you on this journey with me on spiritual economy. I've given you that analogy of the farmer, the farming, and then the selling. I've talked to you about inward economy and outward economy and this management. So there's this idea that I'm presenting to you that there's this inward, and it's its kind of own thing, and there's this outward, and it's kind of its own thing. So question, does the outward feed the inward, or does the inward feed the outward? Say it again. So the inward feeds the outward. You've got to grow the crops before you can sell them. I shall speak for myself. I feel in my experience of trying to be a Christian that I kind of reversed it. I kind of tried to be a good Christian first out in the world to then help me get a sense of who I am inwards. Does anyone else, does that sound crazy? Is anyone else going, yeah, that kind of feels... If I asked you, what would you focus on first? How one acts outwardly or how one acts inwardly? For yourself personally, what do you think you focus more on? Yeah? Anyone else? Or never really thought of that? That's fair. That's a totally fair point to say. And it makes perfect sense. Now, if you're still not sold on it, I want you to think of a tree-fruit analogy. What comes first, the fruit or the tree? The tree. It's the tree that bears fruit. This isn't an accident, these terms, these ideas. It's not an accident that the church fathers talked about spiritual economy with the thought of growing. Isn't it fascinating? Because how much does Christ use the tree fruit analogy? If the fruit is no good, what do? Chop the tree. So it's actually the tree that's important. Because it's the tree that, think about the words we use, it bears the fruit. Bears. What else do we use that term? It's an old term, but what else do we use it when we say A bears B? Child and mother. So it's literally, you can't, there's not the child that births the mother. It's the mother that births the child, correct? It's the tree that bears the fruit. And now going to our talk now, it's the inward economy that bears the outward economy. I have always struggled because I always have felt that I need to act perfect. That my Christianity can only be when the outward version of me, the person that acts out in the world, is perfect. When I get it right, I get to go home, self-reflect, pat myself on the back, and tell God, I'm doing a really good job. Because the outward is perfect. And therefore, it's as if that's the tree. And then the fruit is the inward good fluffy feeling I have because now I feel close to Jesus. Everything that the church fathers have told us, everything that is actually true in the Orthodox faith is the complete opposite. What do? Do you clean the cup? Is dirty outside or inside? And yet, in our culture, because I think this is a cultural problem, to be honest, because clearly the religion is very clear about it, we kind of have the opposite. If on any given Sunday, a person walks in, tattered clothes, 11,000 piercings, mad face tattoos, some crazy hair, if the outward looks uncomfortable, what do we do? What do we assume about the inward? Yeah. Now, it's not to say that you can never judge a book by its cover, because we all do. And to a degree, there's sometimes there's people right next to us. But we're missing the point, because don't we all feel that pressure that the way we prove that we're a good person is only by those outward acts? It's only that I dress appropriately at church, and mum and dad never hear me swear, and they never catch me smoking, and I don't talk to boys or girls depending on your gender, and so the outward looks nice and clean. And so we then struggle with a type of Christianity that is, again, the outward feeds the in. So in this idea of spiritual economy, of household management, it's the in that feeds the out. Now, it's actually, I don't want anyone to get confused, the church fathers were not ever saying it's a one-way street. They actually saw it as a cycle. They saw it as that the inward guides the outward, but the outward indicates what's happening in. So you start with the inward economy, the inward management, your prayers to God, your Bible reading, your confession to Abuna, your relationship with God, which is that grace. Then you go out into the world and you act. And when you find there's that misalignment, you know what that teaches you? I need to go back into the room. I need to reassess. I need to double check some things here. Something's gone missing. So again, it's not a straight line. It's this type of perpetual cycle. The inward feeds the outward. The outward identifies something unaligned, missing, requiring recalibration on the inward. And then I go back inward and I work on that. I read my Bible and I pray and I have my confession and I work on the inward. And then I go back out into the world and I live. Oh, something didn't go right. Okay, let me go back inward. And then I go back outward. Let's go back to the farm. The farmer grows some strawberries. Who doesn't love strawberries? You love strawberries? I love strawberries. You love strawberries? Not lately. Now, a farmer growing their own strawberries most likely will say, I'm really good at this. I'm great. In fact, I take a bit of the strawberry. Well, they say, this is good strawberries. But how will they really know if it's good strawberries? When they sell it. So they go out to the market. What might a customer say looking at the box of strawberries? What might you say if you're looking at strawberries? They're fresh, all there. I don't like it. They're a bit not red, and they're a bit too small, and they have some black dots on it, and then I taste it and they look bland. Now at this stage, does the farmer give up? No, what do? They go back to the farm and they take a look at the soil and they say, oh, is the pH wrong? Are we watering too much? Is there too much sun? We need to go fix this. Hey guys, this is the feedback that we've got. And they go back to doing what? To growing strawberries. They don't give up on the strawberries, do they? They don't. And then they grow more strawberries, and then what do they do with those new strawberries? They go back out to market. Okay. Can you see how this is working? This is the brilliance of this idea of spiritual economy, of the inward economy that feeds into the outward, the management, that then guides me back to what I need to fix on the inward, to then go back out, to then go back in, to then go back out. And that is, in fact, the spiritual life. That is exactly what it is. We sit here so confused, don't we? All of us do. How do I be a good Christian? How do I be a good Christian? Because we think we're on a one-way street. We're actually kind of on a roundabout. And that's a good thing. What I'm telling you isn't a bad thing. It's a good thing. Because the outward doesn't stop just because you're struggling on the inward, and the inward doesn't stop just because you're struggling on the outward. Now, something very, 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 very important. All of this is meaningless unless we understand something very important. What's the point of it all? What's the point of it all? What's the point of starting on inward, trying to figure some stuff out, then to go out, live out in the world, something's wrong, whatever that means. And then to go back in and to, like, we have to actually remember this. So, I'm going to take you a little out of the way, and I bought a prop for a reason. Sorry, what was it, a ring? We're going to play a little game. Hold this. I want you to throw this up and land it in my hand. That was close. That was close. I want you to try again. What happened? So again? She missed. Did she do something evil? Is she a failure? What did she do? She missed. So you've tried it twice now. What's going through your head now? Yeah. No, you're going to... So what a not Irene might do, is they've tried it a few times and then they'll go, there's a target and I've just got to really aim. So maybe you thought you threw too hard, you threw too soft, you weren't looking at the hand. Just because you missed twice doesn't mean you stopped, right? What's another word for missing the target? Leave everyone else to... And I use this imagery for a reason. We don't look at what Irene was doing as failure. We don't want to throw Irene out of church, do we? She doesn't want to never hold a ball again. She just looked at it as, there's a target I've got, there's an objective I'm trying to achieve. It didn't work. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to try again. And I'm going to try again. And after you maybe tried 4 or 5 times, a reasonable person might go, I might ask someone, do you know how to throw this ball into Albert's hand? Yeah, I can do it. And they try and they go, see, well, what am I doing wrong? Well, maybe you've got too much flex. You're not got enough flex. What's going on here? You're twisting like this. Don't go overhand. Go over underhand. Go. There has to be a barometer. We always must remember the thing that we're measuring our life against. I go back to this old idea that I would love for us to use more in our Orthodox language, which is the way. I love this imagery that was used in the ancient church of not calling Christianity Christianity. You know what they used to call it? The way. I'm a follower of the way. Because to call it Christianity, it robs it of something so deep and wonderful. Because Christ didn't just say, I'm the Christ. What is that famous three? I am the way, the truth, the life. Isn't that so beautiful? I am the way. We repeat this, have heard about this many times, but it's so zen. It's so deep. It's so otherworldly. I am the way. I am the path that you ought to take. I am the direction you should go in. Now that we have a way, when I start inward, I know which direction I'm pointing at. And when I go outward, I know whether I've stepped off the path. And then I can go back inward and redirect myself. And then I can go outward and continue along the way. And then if I feel like I got lost, what do? I go back inward, realign, reassess what happened. Oh, I was on the phone. I looked left instead of looking right. I went down the wrong pathway. Go back to Google Maps, biblical maps. Figure out the way again. Go back. So, there's this cycle. The inward feeds into the outward. The outward helps me reassess the inward, recalibrate, go back out, come back in. Always doing this because I'm journeying along the way. Finally, okay, Albert, all the theory. Let's talk about us, the human beings who live in the world. What do I do with this? How do I live in the world? At my job, with my friends, with my family. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to take them, but I might talk about some mistakes we make with this outward economy, because really this is what this talk is about. It's not to talk about how do I read the Bible better and how do I pray, but really one of the fundamental issues is how do I act out in the world? Because, let's be honest, it's much easier very privately to go, I love you, Jesus. Be with me, Abu Sufyan. Same as the black guide me. And then, I'm going to pray our Father. The inward kind of has its comfort because it's private. And I can screw up and no one's going to see and I can make mistakes and that's okay. But it's when we go out to the outward that we struggle. We struggle with the judgment of strangers, of people who don't like us. We wonder and overthink, should I be doing this? Should I not be doing this? I really do want to do it, but I don't know whether I should. So here are some common misconceptions and mistakes we have about our outward economy. Remember, outward management. Because we've got to go into the market and sell the fruit, don't we? It's not for us to stand in the market, in the farm with our boxes of strawberries. What are we doing with the strawberries, guys? We're going out to market. So we've got this fruit. We're going to go out there. And we're going to present it to the world. One of the big issues that we have is this idea that I believe we in the West have accepted about the separation of church and state. And the deeper idea is that our faith should be private. Should be private. Have you ever heard of this? When people are talking to Christians or talking about Christians, oh, I've got no problem with Christians, but can you just keep it private? And there's a way in which we've kind of accepted that with religion. We've been so convinced by the secular West that that's actually the appropriate place for Christianity, to be private. Abuna, I don't mind that you're an Abuna, but can you just keep your beliefs on abortion and gay rights and can you just keep that private? And you, like, if you have this view on LGBT, I don't mind, but can you keep it private? And we've come to kind of accept it, don't we? So that's actually incorrect. That is poor management. We've got to dissuade ourselves of that idea. Can a farmer privately, publicly sell his strawberries? I'm going to go out to the market, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a tent with no doors and put the box of strawberries inside the tent with the price for $5. And then instead of screaming, strawberries, $20 a box, I'm going to go, strawberries, $20 a box. Can a farmer do that? Would it not be ridiculous to tell a farmer to do that? So why do we tell ourselves that? That is poor outward economy. That is poor spiritual economy. Right now, we don't do that anymore. We don't accept that anymore. Remember that when the farmer goes out to market, they sell the fruit, don't they? And what do they sell the fruit for? Is money. And what does the farmer do with the money? Comes back in. We think, again, I have a suspicion it's like a Western thing, but it may be a cultural thing, that we think that our job as Christians going out into the world is only for what I can do outwardly. So it's something like, I'll talk about the Bible only if I can convince this atheist to convert. It's nothing for me. It's for you. I'm going to wear this cross only so that, that preaches Jesus to you. I'm going to turn the other cheek so that you can understand what love is. There's this, it's not written, it's not necessarily spoken, but there's this feeling that that's what the way is. The way is just, I'm just going out into the world and I'm just giving you some Jesus, and you up at the back, you can have some Jesus. Do you want some Jesus? Here, I'll give you some Jesus. You want some Jesus? I'll give you some Jesus. But in the spiritual economy, the way the church fathers understood it, I act out in the world, but I use that to help me understand the inward, to go back in. Like the farmer sells in the market to take the money to do what? To reinvest it in the farm. That's the point. That's actually the point. I thought of this example while I was driving here. I say to God, God, so here's my little inward-outward journey. I say to God, I'm a bit impatient, Lord. This is me privately in my room. I've closed the door. No one can hear it. I say, Lord, people tick me off. They really annoy me. I get really frustrated. Help me, Lord, if someone does something annoying, to turn the other cheek. Now, that's a pretty high standard to set for myself, isn't it? To turn the other cheek. There's an implication there. I'm not going to respond. I'm going to be calm. I'm going to be good. I'm going to say to the person who slaps me, Jesus loves you. Jesus loves you. And then I'm going to go on my day. And then guess what happens? I'll go out to work tomorrow. And it's lunchtime, so I'm deciding I want to go out. I feel like Subway today. And I go turn a corner, because this actually happened to me once. And a guy wasn't paying attention. I'm like, when you're like walking next to the building and then the guy's coming next to you, it's like, buddy, I don't know where to go because the wall's right there. And then I go, and then he hits me. And then I turn around and go, sorry, like me trying to turn the other cheek. And he starts swearing at me. So you know what I do in my head? I start swearing at him. Oh, I can't believe that guy. And then I turn to my friend, I can't believe that guy. Do you see what he just did? I mean, where was I supposed to go? Into the, what? Now, our common misconception is that my throwing the ball, my aiming, failed. All right? But the story doesn't stop there. The church fathers teach us, take that back into the inner room. Let that teach you and guide you and help you recalibrate and reassess. To go back to God and go, hey God, remember how I asked you to help me to turn the other cheek? I had a moment today. I couldn't do it. Hey Abuna, I had this moment a couple of weeks ago where I had actually, funnily enough, was praying about being patient, but a moment happened and I swore at this guy in my head. Can you give me some advice? Read the Bible, go turn the other cheek. Jesus on the cross, yeah, he was really relaxed about it, and how can I learn? And I take all of that, and then what do? Go back out into the world. That's what it is. That's what the way is. That's what spiritual economy is. The management of the inward and the outward. It's not about failure. It's not about kicking myself while I'm down. It's not about telling myself that I can't. It's just about figuring out and giving it a try and stuffing up and coming back and figuring it out. Try another thing. Go out there. Give it a try. Oh, it didn't work 100% the way I wanted to. All right, what can I learn from it? Come back in. I feel that this is a much better Christianity for me. Not the one that I've been trying to live, where I've sometimes, and please, if anyone has not done this, let me know, but I know I've done it, where I won't do a thing until I think I can be perfect at it. Has anyone had that feeling? Like, I won't talk about Jesus or the Bible unless I can understand the Bible perfectly. Anyone had that? You know, maybe someone at work talks about the Bible and goes, yeah, I'm not too, yeah, I don't know enough. I don't know enough. Well, who knows enough? When you actually think, who knows enough? I don't know. Do you know enough? Abuna, do you know enough? Abuna doesn't know enough. Maybe we should tell Abuna stop preaching. Because he doesn't know enough. I don't know enough. Does the Pope not? Who knows enough? See what I mean? And we do that to ourselves. We don't need to be perfect inward Christians. We don't need to be perfect outward Christians. The point is to keep going through this. If I may give, there's this frustrating thing that I've noticed in my life, in that I have this weird set of rules for Christianity that I don't apply to anything else in my life. And then I realize how much it sabotages my Christianity. Here's an example. If I decided, like today, I wanted to, like my Arabic's horrendous. So if I decided today I wanted to learn Arabic, do I need to know the Arabic language perfectly before I open up an Arabic book? See how that sounds stupid? It sounds so dumb. Yeah? And do I have to be sure before I say an Arabic word that I can pronounce it correctly? Well, that doesn't even make sense, Albert. Yeah? And when I mispronounce the Arabic word, which one will always do when one is studying a language for the first time, is that the time to go, oh man, I've got to give up now. Khalas, it's over. How can I try? Yeah? I want to learn a new language. I want to figure out how to cook. I want to start learning how to play guitar. I want to become a great soccer player. I'm becoming a doctor. I'm becoming an engineer. I'm starting this job. I'm learning to paint for the first time. Think of any human endeavor. Anything that you've ever wanted to do or are doing now. Do you set those standards for yourself? Those ridiculous standards that we as Christians often unreasonably apply to ourselves? Never. Never. Okay, I'm going to give this guitar thing a try, but if this chord goes bad, that's it. Burnt straight to the bin. Oh. We don't do that. No one does that. And yet with our Christianity, we're so ready to give up because the first time we go out, yeah, and we try to manage that outward, outward economy, and it doesn't go quite right, failure. Immediately, I'm hanging up, take the cross off, quickly, and put it up. I'm quitting, coach. What are we doing? Why do we do that to ourselves? Mad trick from the devil. You've got to give him props. Yeah? You've got to give that beast credit for being able to manipulate us into applying this ridiculous standard in our own Christianity. The church fathers have told us what to do. We don't have to apply this to us. Inward feeds the outward. Outward helps me reassess, rectify the inward. Inward to outward, outward to inward. Keep going along the way. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. That's spiritual economy. That makes Christianity a whole lot easier. And it takes off a whole lot of pressure that we don't need. That's how we live out in the world. How do I be a Christian in work? I just told you. It's not about the action. What you need to do is you need to have a New King James Version, but it needs to be the one with it. You don't need those things. You don't need those. You know what? You should have 4 icons on your desk. It's not about that. Manage it. Give it a try. Stuff it up. No one cares. I swear to God, God doesn't care. God does not care. The disciples don't care. No one else in the world cares. But we convince ourselves that it's a big deal. Go out, try, come back, figure it out. Yeah. What do you reckon? Read the Bible. Okay. Pray a bit. Okay. Come back out. Okay. Any questions? Inward management, outward management. Inward economy, outward economy. Go.